Looking to be more productive and jump those hurdles of change and challenge easier? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Thrive in Life with your hosts, Zaheen Nanji.
Hello and welcome to Thrive in Life. This is episode number 34. And today we're going to speak about mindfulness because it's the buzzword nowadays. But what is mindfulness? Well, our expert, Laurel Vespi, who is also a dear friend of mine, is going to share that with you. But first, hey, if you ever want to learn more about how to build resilience, come to my webinars. Go on my website at zaheennanji.com, and we hold a webinar once a month on the last Thursday of every month. So the next one is on June 29th. So go to my website, again, zaheennanji.com, and get on there, click on the image that says webinar, and I'll see you on the other side, right? Mm-hmm. So for those of you listening to the podcast, know that we are actually doing this as a YouTube show first, which then gets turned into a podcast. So let's get started here. I'm just going to introduce you to Laurel. For more than 30 years, she is a motivational speaker and a mindfulness expert, and has been helping individuals living crazy busy lives. I mean, hello, I was there. I'm still there. Reduce stress and find more balance. She actually uses a simple 3P approach to help us to build or to guide us to have a more meaningful life. She is also the author of 2 award-winning books. She's also a certified coach, and she's been on TV and radio like Global, City TV, CTV, Easy Rock, CBC Radio, and so on. So, Laurel, welcome on.
Welcome.
Yes.
It's so great to be here with you, Zaheen.
Oh, and I know I don't remember, like, when did we first meet and stuff? Because, I mean, like, I've known you for years, it seems.
It has been a long time. I actually remember we met first at a trade show somewhere, and your booth was next to my booth, and it was not a very engaging trade show, and I think we spent the whole time just talking to each other because I don't think there were really very many people there.
That's right. And that's how I got to know you. And then we just saw each other everywhere, and then we took a course together. So yeah, wow, time flies, hey?
It does.
Okay, well, let's get started. What is mindfulness? There's so much buzz about it, like there's articles on Inc.com and fastcompany.com and all these great websites that speak about mindfulness or explain to us about that. But how do you explain that to your listeners and viewers?
And you're right. Mindfulness is the current buzzword. Everywhere you turn, it's mindful this and mindful that. And I like a really simple definition of mindfulness being conscious awareness of the present moment, which means we're actually paying attention to what is happening right now within ourselves, so our thoughts and our feelings, sensations we may be having, but also awareness of what's going on around us. And mindfulness, sometimes people think, well, mindfulness is that meditation, like what is the difference between the two? And I think the simple way to make the distinction is mindfulness is more of a way of being. So it's a way in which we engage in the world, a quality that we bring to all of our experiences, where meditation is an actual formal practice. So it's a thing that you do. I sit down and meditate, where I don't sit down to be mindful. Mindfulness is about how we cultivate this awareness of what it is that's going on around us and within us.
I really like the way you explain that, because I think that's what a lot of us think out there, that being mindful is about being in Zen and meditation, but that's an act. Whereas what you're saying, yeah, it's a state of being.
Yes.
So to give you an example, is this mindfulness? The other day I went for a massage, and the therapist spent 2.5 hours on me because she did hot stone and cupping together. And the whole time I was there, I noticed that I didn't really let my thoughts wander like they would usually. I was just so mindful of each stroke and each cupping that, that she did. And it was just so, like, relaxing.
Hmm.
Is that being mindful?
It is. It is. Think of mindfulness as I'm actually paying attention to what's happening, compared to what we are doing most of the time, where we're not paying attention at all to what is happening. We aren't necessarily paying attention to all the thoughts that are racing through our mind, which, our mind is a thinking part of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not a bad thing. But we now just bring awareness to our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
We bring awareness to perhaps sensations. So when you're talking about, I feel the strokes or the stones as they're resting on me. Yes, that's mindfulness. Think about mindfulness this way: that when you have a shower in the morning, most people in the busy world, which is most of us, we get into the shower in the morning. And it's a very automatic experience that we have. We turn it on. We already know where we need to turn the knob to get it to the temperature that we like, because we've done it so many times.
Mm-hmm.
We get into the shower, and what we're doing while we're in the shower is actually thinking about everything else that we have to do in the day, or something that had happened yesterday. We're not really paying attention to the sensation of the water running over our body, or the smell of the soap, or whatever. The John Kabat-Zinn, who is sort of one of the great mindfulness masters, he always says, when you're in the shower, be in the shower, as opposed to when you're in the shower being somewhere else. That's mindfulness.
Okay. So why do you think that there's so much interest now in this?
Well, even as someone who has been a mindfulness practitioner for many, many, many years, when I look around at the busy world and knowing how I can get pulled into the busyness of the world, and then you look at everyone else, everyone is running from, this to the next thing, whatever they're doing to the next thing. They're thinking about the next thing. They have so many commitments. There's so many distractions. Technology is this, blessing and a curse of, we can do wonderful things with technology, but it also distracts us constantly. Mm-hmm. And I think we just sort of hit this critical, this tipping point, the kind of critical mass of people saying, there has to be something different, a different way of being able to live my life or engage in what it is that I'm doing, where I'm not constantly distracted and feeling overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which, I find that there's so many of us nowadays. It's also funny because I did a virtual class in May. Now that you're seeing this recording, it's June. And there was a lady who emailed me after and said, thank you so much for doing the class, because I've been so distracted for the last few years. And it's just because of the technology. And I thought, wow, like, it's almost like we have the mindset that we can't control. Mm-hmm. When you do have the choice to control where you put your phone, when you turn it on, right?
Yeah, true. Yes, we do. But, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to participate. Yes. And there's also a lot of habit that gets created. So we start having this habit of, that your phone is always with you. It just becomes a habit. And so, as most habits that become bad habits, they're harder to break. And I think the other reason why people are so interested in mindfulness now is because people are reporting higher levels of stress than they ever have in the past. People are being pulled multiple ways. We find a lot of people in that sort of sandwich generation experience of, they still have kids that, they haven't quite launched yet, but they're also now needing to perhaps pay attention to parents who are aging or needing different things. Workplaces, very stressful, the economy, everything. And I think it's just got to this point where people say there has to be another.
Okay, we're just going to pause right now. Hold on. Okay, so that is interesting. So let's go now into how can mindfulness, how is that related to the big word resilience?
The big word resilience. Well, I don't need to define resilience for you, but as I was defining it with my clients, resilience is our ability to bounce back, our ability to be able to recover from whatever kind of setback or challenge that we might have. And we know that resilience is a learned set of habits. You're not born resilient. It's something that you build and you cultivate.
Mm-hmm.
There's an interesting study that was done recently that showed that people who had mindfulness practices also had elevated resilience skills. And so if we think, well, how are those two things connected? It probably has to do with the fact that when we can pause and observe what it is that's happening in our mind, in our thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and we have then the opportunity to be able to decide, am I going to actually, wallow in those thoughts or follow that particular train of thought?
Mm-hmm.
And by being able to be more intentional about which thoughts I'm actually paying attention to, I can be more resilient because I'm not going to kind of get pulled into that, quagmire of negative thinking. And there's Martin Seligman, who's sort of
Yes.
the father of positive psychology. Let's call him that. I'm not sure
Yes.
if you would appreciate that name, but he says that our ability to learn from setbacks has a huge influence on our resilience and optimism. Well, the only way we can learn from setbacks is if we actually are pausing and paying attention to what it is that's happening in that whole experience. So I think that's the beginning of it. Mm-hmm. And I also think that, there's many characteristics of what I would call sort of a resilient mindset, but there's a couple that are particularly, I think connected to mindfulness. The first one being able to pay attention to our thoughts as they're happening.
Yes.
And we have this strange relationship with thoughts. We have tens of thousands of thoughts a day, and that's a perfectly natural and normal thing to be thinking. I describe it this way to clients, that your mind thinks, that's its job. Just in the same way that your heart beats and your lungs breathe, they have a job. Your mind has a job and it thinks. And so it's not bad that your mind's thinking. However, we can have a different relationship with our thoughts where we don't have to necessarily, I describe them as sort of get on the train, that particular thought train, and ride it to wherever it goes. I can be aware of, I'm actually thinking about this. Is this helpful in this particular situation? And if not, I can choose a different pattern of thoughts.
Mm-hmm. I really like the way you explain that yes, the mindset, and we have negative thoughts, but starting to become aware of those thoughts is the first step.
Is absolutely the first step. And also, mindfulness teaches us that thoughts are just thoughts. They're not facts. They're not instructions. They're not the gospel truth. They're just thoughts passing through our mind. And we get to it's not about emptying our mind of thoughts or pushing particular thoughts away. Sometimes people think of that of mindfulness. I'm going to I'll empty my mind or stop thinking. No, because that's what your mind does. It thinks.
Yeah.
But what we can do is actually pay attention to the quality of our thoughts.
Yeah.
The best way to describe it is this. Think about your mind as sort of like this giant train station, a very, very busy train station. And there's all kinds of trains that are coming and going. And we are hopping on a train of thinking, whether it's a negative train or a positive train, and we ride it for a while. But what happens when we're very busy and we're not paying attention is that we're not aware of what train we're on. And all of a sudden, then we find ourselves, 2/3 of the way somewhere on this train that wasn't really where we wanted to go. So mindfulness is about being aware that we're thinking, knowing that they're not facts, they're not instructions, and we can get off that train and get onto a different train.
That's a great analogy. I love it, Laurel. So what are some simple things or tips that you can share with our listeners and viewers on how they can be more mindful?
Well, I think the best way is to actually think about it in the most simple way. Sometimes what happens is we get all excited, it's particularly now we see a lot of talk about, everywhere you turn, there's something about mindfulness. And like anything else, if we try to jump in and, oh, wow, I'm going to have a completely different relationship with my thoughts. I'm going to do this. And then we get very distracted in that process. So the simple place to begin is actually learning to insert pauses back into our day. We've kind of eliminated any pause. We're very busy. And if there is a moment of pause, which, when there's a moment of pause, because there's many of them, we fill it with something. So we are checking our phone, or we're moving on to the next task, or we're always moving into the next thing. And so being able to create moments of pause that allow us to just breathe for a moment. The simplest mindfulness technique is to take 3 conscious breaths, which is simply about paying attention to the fact that we're actually breathing. So when we breathe, we inhale, and then there is a pause before we exhale. And our body actually knows, it knows, oh, now we exhale. And then there's this other little pause that happens before we inhale again. And that little cycle of inhale and pause and exhale and pause, just paying attention to it for 3 breaths allows us to settle into this particular moment. And then perhaps we become more aware of other things that are happening. Now, of course, the challenge in that is relearning the habit of inserting pauses back into our day. They're all over they're everywhere. There are many, many kinds of pauses, lots of places we can look for them. But it's about creating that new habit of finding them again. Yeah. So sometimes, particularly if we're very busy, we can use something to remind us. It would be nice if we would remind ourselves.
Yes.
But it's like, oh no, it's the end of the day. I forgot. Right. So that's one of the places that technology becomes a great ally. You can actually set a little alarm to go off at some point in your day. That's your signal to just pause for a moment and take 3 conscious breaths, and then just notice what's happening. What am I noticing in my own body? And then looking around, what do I notice is happening around me? And then carry on. Yeah. It may actually help you choose to do something different, but maybe it doesn't. And that's not really the point. It's just about bringing ourselves back to this moment. One of the other biggest misconceptions about mindfulness is that we're all going to live in the moment. Well, that's a silly idea, because there are many moments. There are past moments and there are future moments, and they're all good. It's just being aware of which moment am I in. Am I constantly thinking about the past when actually thinking about the future might be a better thing, or coming back to this moment? So rather than being in the moment all the time, it's about always returning to the moment, continually bringing ourselves back. And that's how pauses can really help with that.
That's great. Now, what would stop someone from practicing mindfulness, or what's the biggest obstacle out there?
Probably two biggest obstacles. One is that people are busy, of course. It's sort of that's why we want to, and that's why we have trouble. And so we think we don't have time. It's like, okay, someone is listening to us now going, okay, yeah, this all sounds great. I don't have time for this. And the beauty is a lot of the practices that we can learn are quite simple. They don't actually take you a great amount of time, but that's an obstacle, because we think that we're on a train that says, I don't have time, and can't get off it. And the second thing that gets in the way for people is actually sticking with it, so that they begin some of these simple practices. one of the things that I teach people quite early is about learning how to start and end your day, because if we can bookend how you start and end your day with just very simple practices that take, minutes, truly just minutes, it begins to alter what's happening in your day. But being able to stick with that is also a challenge, because we get excited, we start doing it, and then, like many things, it falls by the wayside. People have an idea that creating a new habit, it takes a very short amount of time. We read a magazine in the grocery line that, in 21 days, we're going to create a habit. And it's like, no, you're not. It's just like, no, you are not. Yes. You're not going to do it in 30 days either. No, you are not. It takes time to create a new neural pathway.
Yeah.
At least 66 days to create a new habit, and sometimes much longer depending on the habit.
Wow.
So being able to stick with it that length of time, I think is also a challenge.
Wow. So, you know what? We have learned so much from you, Laurel, about what mindfulness is. Yes, it's not just meditation. Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
It's being aware. And we also learned some tips, which is a simple one, which is just breathing and just coming back to the moment as well. So I know, Laurel, you have a Facebook group, but I know that you also have tons of free stuff of, value that you always give away. How can viewers and listeners access all that information from you?
If they go to my website, stonecirclecoaching.com, they'll find all kinds of things there to be able to help them. Lots of blog posts and there's a nice guided meditation they can download, lots of free things there. The other thing, which is the way in which I begin to help people sort of take back their lives, catch up to their lives that are busy and feel like they're running away, is a program that I teach that helps people do exactly what we were talking about. Learn to create these little pauses and begin and end their day in a more intentional, conscious way in actually less than 10 minutes a day.
Oh, wow.
And yes, and truly in less than 10 minutes a day. And what people, all the people who've already taken the program say, they can't believe how these simple things really do have an effect. And I stick with you past that 66-day point, because then by that point you actually have begun to create those new neural pathways of habit. So if people are interested in thinking, you know what, I would like to not feel so busy. And it's not about, I'm going to tell you to stop doing a whole bunch of things in your life. No, you're going to keep doing whatever it is you want to do in your life.
But you want to fit this.
It'll slide in very easily into your day. They can check the Catch Up to Your Life program out. It's a special URL. It's at laurelvespi.com/10 minutes a day, 10, the number 10.
I will make sure to put that in the show notes as well. So you heard that, and you will see it as well on the video. It's laurelvespi.com/10 minutes a day.
Perfect. Yeah.
And it's the number 10, or it's
the number 10. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
10.
Okay. Well, Laurel, I can't believe it that we've already come to the end of the show. And for all of you listening or watching the video, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking the time out of your busy day to watch these nuggets that I and guests like, Laurel come on and share this with you. And that's all we want to do, is share these with you, share our knowledge with you so that you can thrive in life. All right. Until next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Thrive in Life with your hosts, Zaheen Nanji. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit ZaheenNanji.com. That's ZaheenNanji.com. We'll catch you on the next episode of Thrive in Life.